So I'm Nick. I've driven a normal little hatchback right around Australia, um, and I am here to tell you that you absolutely can drive around Australia in a normal car. Um, there are some caveats, some big caveats, and I wanted to just tell you the the kind of the pros and cons of driving a standard sedan around this magnificent country. I've got a little list just so I can run through them with you. But I would say um, if you're doing your first trip around Australia and you just want to see the main sites, and I'm talking um, even the more remote places, the coast of um, South Australia and right around Western Australia in the Northern Territory, you can see most of that on a good sealed road. There are big sections of it that you won't be able to do. So Cape Leveque in the far northwest and Shark Bay and Monkey Mia, that sort of area, you won't be able to do. Um, Good parts of South Australia you won't be able to do, but you will be able to get into the Flinders Ranges. And what I would recommend is you just look at the points around Australia that you want to get to and work out um, whether you can do it in a normal car. Like I really wanted to see Cape Leveque, and and I did that on a great 1 day tour. Um, One of the most memorable things I did was to fly little dusty red runways in Cape Leveque in a plane tour from Broome. So I would say you can subsidise those points of interest that you really set on seeing that you can't take a normal car into in other ways. So I've got a few pros and cons. I'll start with the pros because presuming you're watching this video because you don't have a four-wheel drive, um, I I'll tell you about the good things. So the first thing is the cost. Um, Four-wheel drive rigs are only getting more expensive to buy and expensive to run. So I'd say the cost is obviously your major consideration. And when you've just got a normal car like the one you've probably got in your driveway, there's no extra cost. The fuel costs are, you're driving big lengths, but I'd say the fuel costs are fairly nominal, and the camping costs are fairly nominal um, in the big picture of travel. So cost is a huge consideration, and it's a big win if you don't buy that big rig, especially if you're only going to use the thing to travel in, and you may not be doing it all the time. Then cost is a major consideration. Of course, you can buy a four wheel drive and sell it on, and let's presume car prices remain inflated, but that may not be the the fact going forward. But cost, yeah, if you don't have the cost or don't want to have put the cost into a major new vehicle, then the thing that you've got is going to do a great job of getting around this country. Um, the next one I wanted to talk about was the sense of feeling light and nimble, and that's partly emotional, partly practical. But what I really love about driving around Australia is just being able to pull over literally anywhere. I think um, you can become quite cocooned in your car And a great pleasure I get is from pulling over whenever I see anything. It could be a tree, a building, you know, any sort of interesting. There was a part of Western Australia where there's termite mounds and people dress them, and I just loved pulling over and taking photos of those things. And um, one of the most pleasurable things I get is just from taking a moment to pull over on the side of the road and absorb the landscape, and feel the environment, hear the sounds. I love doing that, and it's really easy to do in a normal car. I think I'd probably do it less if I was in a bigger vehicle, just because it's harder to stop and start. But I can do a Yui and pull over, see something in a little car, and I like that feeling of lightness. Um, Another thing I like about having a normal car is in campsites, presuming you've got a tent or a swag, you often get the best parts of campsites because the more remote you go, the more people have big rigs that are all camped up in one place, and there's a nice little tent area, um, that is under occupied, and I love that about being in a normal car. And you'll get used to being kind of an oddity, I think, um, and yeah, you're definitely seen as being a bit unusual for driving a normal car around this country. Um, and the last thing, I think it's fun, and that's what travel's got to be. And I have a lot of fun just being in a car that I can park in my driveway, but also travel around the country in. And there's something to be said for that feeling of not being burdened. Um, Travel should make you feel light. I think it shouldn't make you feel burdened, and your kit has a lot uh, to to do with that psychologically, emotionally, and financially, as we've already talked about. So they're the things I can think about that are the big upsides of driving a two-wheel drive car around Australia. Um, and you're going to love it, regardless of what vehicle. This I love every single second of driving this country, and you will too. Um, where's my list gone? Okay, so let's get on to the cons. Um, the the words four-wheel drive only um, is a big one, and when you see those words, you should take it really seriously, um, and that is a huge limiting factor in travelling around Australia. Um, you're not going to be able to go down the Gip River Road, or as I said, Cape Leveque is a stunning place. I've flown over it. Um, Vast swathes of the country you're not going to be able to get to. Um, and I should have said in the pros as well, you are going to be able to get to places in a two-wheel drive that are remote, where you won't see people for days and days, if that's what you want. Absolutely, you can do that in a normal car. But four-wheel drive only, you are going to be limited. There are going to be places that you can't go, and the further north you get, the more you have to check roads to see if they're even passable. I found May to be a fantastic time to drive the northern west part of the country. I really like it up there, and May you'll see some great burns happening, like controlled burns on the side of the road, and you can see them in a normal car. But I'm getting distracted. 4-wheel drive only. Yeah, check the maps of where you're going. Do your research and take that sign seriously. And I can tell you from experience that if something's rated as unsealed but passable by a 2-wheel drive, you're fine. But if it's 4-wheel drive, don't attempt it. The only stupid thing I've done in driving around that was because it was the end of my trip. I drove down the Unadata track in a Subaru Impreza. It was an exceptionally low slung vehicle, and I was told that I would do my car some damage. And I started down it, and I was committed to seeing the pink roadhouse, and I did get there. And when I sold the vehicle on, although I wasn't able to drive it back, I did do some pretty serious structural damage to the engine mounts and other things with that car, and that was just driving it slowly. So take 4-wheel drive really, really seriously, because what you can find if you attempt those roads, you'll find parts of it will be fine, and then you'll come to parts that just are not fine, and that's not a good way to spend your time. You could drive down what a seemingly passable, unsealed bit of road rated as 4-wheel drive only, thinking that you're fine, and then find the reason why that sign's there. I've actually made a little video that I'll cut to now. Yesterday I filmed a little scene in a typical, it wasn't even a 4-wheel drive track, but it's the sort of thing that you'll come across in your decision making in driving around Australia. So I'll play that now, and then you can get a feel for like, what does real Australia look like in a normal car, and what are the restrictions. So just last night came across sort of a typical example of what you're going to have to decide when travelling around Australia in a 2-wheel drive vehicle. So Wikicamps told me that there's a nice state park free campground up this road, and it's an unmade road. It looks passable until this point. So you may or may not get through there in a normal car. There's some pretty big peaks and troughs in that bit of road. So what's the decision there? Well, the decision is, what's the worst that could happen actually? The worst that could happen is I take my sump out and get stuck on this bit of road, and that's my trip over for however long it takes to get winched out of there or repair the car, or both. And that doesn't sound like a good time to me. So whenever I come across situations like that, I don't risk it. It's not worth it. I actually then went and stayed at a campground on a race course next to a beautiful grandstand, and it was fine. It was absolutely fine. In fact, I was probably happier there than up this road. And yeah, that's the way I think about it. If something presents an element of risk for your own safety and for, more for also the preservation of your journey, don't do it. It's not worth it. Like, there's always another route around these things. You don't have to go do that thing. You'll find something equally as good just around the corner. So, top tip: think about it, don't do it. The next con is the chaos of living out of a two-wheel drive hatchback. Any car, I think, that's not a custom build, there's going to be an element of chaos. You will find systems and methods and containers to make your life a bit more organized. But I think particularly in a car, where you want it to be a car that you can just turn back into a car and enjoy life when you need to, you're going to find that there's an element of constantly looking for that damn thing that you had 30 seconds ago. And that is, you have to embrace that. It is a mess doing this thing in a normal car. And the last thing I wanted to say is that I can't imagine doing this with more than two people. I do this on my own. I can't imagine doing this with two people in a hatchback. But you could. I'm sure you could just about. I've got another video that is my kit. You can see my setup. But if I had to carry another swag or another set of beds for someone else, that would make it difficult. And for a family especially, maybe in a station wagon you could cram in, but God, it's going to be unpleasant. But yeah, I guess in conclusion, it really depends on how long you're planning to be on the road and where you're planning to go. I think if I was doing a second big trip for months and months, especially around South Australia and Western Australia, which are my favourite parts of the country, and the Northern Territory, I think I would do it in a four-wheel drive. But if you just want to get a feel for the country and see the sights, and you don't have the money and you want to keep it fun and light, do it in a two-wheel drive. You'll have a great time. And again, the video I've got in about my kit, think about, you're surrounded by people in four-wheel drives that have the kit, so don't overburden yourself with lots of recovery kit, because you don't want to be going places that you shouldn't go. So limiting your survival kit to the like, I don't carry fuel. I definitely carry lots of water, but I never carry fuel. And with a bit of planning and noticing of your fuel gauge and listening to people, the more remote you go for where the next fuel stop is, you'll be absolutely fine without any fuel. So yeah, that's a wrap on this. Have a great trip, however you decide to do it, and have a great day. Just one thing I thought of as a con, just to extend, that's really important, is driving on beaches, and you will miss out on that in a normal car. There are a couple of beaches I can think of: Emu Beach or Emu Bay on Kangaroo Island, which is a stunning beach which you can get into on fine on a two-wheel drive, but there's great stretches of beach down near Esperance that you can drive long sections of right along the beach, literally the beach. So you can't do that in your two-wheel drive. you would be mad to take your normal car onto the beach at all. I don't do it, apart from beaches that are clearly, Emu Bay is the one exception I can think of. I won't take my vehicle on a beach that's in any way soft. So yeah, if you love the idea of camping or driving on a beach, especially in Western Australia, and I think there's a few places in Queensland you can do it as well, and South Australia, then you just can't do that in a normal car, and you'll have to accept that. Yeah, anyway, a little addition that I thought of as I was packing up.